Everyone, how's it going? We are back. Some week 6 action. Sadly, Kyle Rudolph won't be in your lineups this week, but you know what? We got to move forward. We're here with Eric. Obviously, he does the slate breakdown for us every week. How's it going, Eric?
I'm doing good. I'm doing a little better than the Denver Broncos. What an egg they laid last night.
I'll tell you what, though. The San Diego Chargers coach at the end of the game, with his hands between his head when they were going up for the Hail Mary, that Trevor Siemian just absolutely pathetic arm strength on that Hail Mary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that, man, they survived. They needed that win bad. The Chargers did. Yeah,
indeed.
So yeah, as mentioned, Broncos and Chargers last night pretty much went how, you said it was. CJ Anderson kind of had some huge plays called back that, I mean, honestly, he could have had 25 fantasy points last night and ended with like 10. So that was a wild game.
Horseshoes and hand grenades. Oh
my. But on to the Sunday games. No London games, so we don't have to wake up at 9:30. 1 p.m., 49ers versus Bills. What's your read on this game? Are there any sneaky plays here? What are you looking at in this game?
Well, you have to give a lot of credit to the Bills, the way they've played, the way LaShawn McCoy has run the ball. The 49ers run defense is second worst in the NFL, and they're fifth worst against fantasy running backs. So you can love LaShawn McCoy, and you love LaShawn McCoy even more because of his volume. And the Bills facing I call him a backup quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, a Rex Ryan, Rob Ryan defense at home against a woeful 49ers offense. I think that even puts more into LaShawn McCoy's hands as a premium play. You can't love anybody in the Bills passing game. Tyrod Taylor, Robert Woods, Marquise Goodwin. There's just not much to love there. I guess if you go with someone, it would be Charles Clay. There's just not a lot of trustworthy fantasy tight ends, so maybe Clay gets some volume. The best part of the 49ers in recent weeks has been Jeremy Curley. Now, that's unfortunately mitigated by the fact that now we have Kaepernick instead of Blaine Gabbert. We can't be sure where the targets might go to. So I'm fading the 49ers, even Carlos Hyde, and going with LaShawn McCoy, the Bills defense. Maybe if you're doing a Bills stack, you throw the kicker and the tight end in there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I might go Hyde on DK because he's 5,100 and he'll be low owned because he's not, a first tier play by any means. But I just look at what they did against Seattle, and it was just so bizarre to me that they kept going to him in the fourth quarter down like 28. So there's a little bit of that I'm like, all right, you know what? Maybe I'll throw Hyde in there. But yeah, I agree. The plays here are McCoy and Bills D. Charles Clay, like him on DK at 2,900. But generally speaking, yeah. Gross game, but you got to hand it to the Bills. The last 2 weeks, their resume looks pretty dang good.
The last three, you got Cardinals, Patriots, and Rams.
The Rams last week, yeah.
So there's 3 solid victories.
Yep, absolutely. So McCoy and Log out there. Next game, Eagles and Redskins. I mean, I'm hearing some thoughts about the wind there or something maybe, but I don't know if I'm buying into that quite yet. Maybe wait till we get to Saturday. But what's your read on this game?
A little Segui here. It's the winds of change with the Eagles defense. Jim Schwartz has brought a legit defense to Philly. The Eagles are number 3 against fantasy quarterbacks, number 7 against fantasy running backs, number 4 against wide receivers, number 1 against tight ends, number 2 against kickers, and top 10 against DSTs. There's not a lot to love when you're playing against the Eagles right now. So you got to fade your Washington Redskins. I know the Redskins won both meetings last year, and Kirk Cousins did lead a blowout that featured 365 and 4. but he's going to have probably no Jordan Reed. So that puts some value potentially as a sleeper on Vernon Davis. But the Eagles defense, get this, they've allowed 8 catches for 52 yards for the season to tight ends. That's a bad game for most tight ends in your DFS lineup for a single game. So I'm not in love with any particular plays on either side. Zach Ertz let us down, but he does get a potent opponent against the Redskins, in which he went 13 catches for 122 last year. But I'm just not loving a lot of this game.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of that stat you threw out there for tight ends, I mean, Jordan Reed going through the concussion protocol, as you mentioned. I mean, I like Vernon Davis all in well. He's a great prospect coming out, but this is not the time. This Eagles defense is good. I mean, I know they beat up on the Steelers without Le'Veon, but I don't care. Like, if anyone can shut down the Steelers at any point, they got my respect, Yeah.
I guess, the running backs have been doing great against the Redskins. They are third worst in fantasy against running backs, but who can you really guarantee in the Eagles offense? I guess Darren Sproles for his receiving, but Wendell Smallwood 2 weeks ago went off, and then last week he completely disappeared. And any given week he could take it back from Ryan Matthews. So you can't really advise the Eagles backs despite the favorable matchup.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Let's do it.
Pick Ryan Matthews or Darren Sproles if you had to pick.
I guess I'm going Sproles on price.
Yeah.
He's probably less affordable on DraftKings with the PPR, so I might split my vote Matthews on DraftKings potentially. But in general, I'm not going with anything in this game. I think this is one of the games that could play down to the number, like a 21-17 game, something under 40.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think Sproles is my pick as well, especially with the price considered. I just think, one of these weeks, we saw it against the Steelers. He got taken down at the 1 last week. He's got that big play touchdown potential, and against this Redskins team, I think that's a pretty good bet. On here, we joke around sometimes about they should just cancel this game and just cancel the teams as well. Browns and Titans. Probably got to love DeMarco Murray here, but maybe a little Delaney Walker. Is that kind of where you're headed here?
Well, I think you're discrediting the Titans. They've been, again, like Jim Schwartz has done to the Eagles, Dick LeBeau has brought this to the Titans defense. They're number 4 against fantasy quarterbacks and running backs, number 6 against fantasy wide receivers, and they've yet to allow a 300-yard passer or a 100-yard rusher. So what team could you say that about? And then you're saying they're at home against the only winless team in football. I think the Titans defense is a play. DeMarco Murray is unstoppable this year. He's a premium option. Even Derrick Henry may be a candidate to rack up 50 yards on a touchdown as the Titans run out the clock against the Browns. The Browns have been 9th worst against fantasy running backs. Love the running game. Hate the Titans passing game. Mariota had a great week last week, but and the Browns are 5th worst against fantasy quarterbacks and 8th worst against the pass. But Mariota, you can't guarantee numbers when his receivers are dead last in fantasy for wide receiver scoring. Tajay Sharp, Andre Johnson, Kendall Wright, Rashard Matthews, they just don't move the DFS needle. So you love Murray. You maybe consider Henry as a sleeper. And then if you're going anything on the Brown side, maybe if Josh McCown is the quarterback, you go with Gary Barnidge. But there's some talk that Terrell Pryor might be their quarterback. And what does that do? That takes their best fantasy weapon and makes them a quarterback. I guess if he starts at quarterback, there might be a value on his price, but I don't see the matchup being that great either. So avoid a lot of this.
Yeah, I have to say, I've kind of whispered it through the first few weeks, but man, DeMarco Murray, like hands up, like I was wrong, dude. I thought he was done, and he looks tremendous. Not only are the Titans looking good as a running game, but like he's making crazy plays every week, just opening up stuff when it's not even there. So, I'm not afraid to put him in a cash game. He's right there with McCoy. I like McCoy a little more this week, but he's right there, man. Every week, I'm cool with both of them.
Yeah.
Next one here, Ravens Giants. This is a pretty volatile game in terms of like this Giants offense. What's your read on this Giants offense?
I think it's horrible. It's completely inept. Yeah. They've done nothing in the red zone. Odell Beckham, I guess, is a play as a cash game because he's going to get a lot of volume. But he hasn't been scoring a lot of touchdowns. He got a garbage time touchdown last week. I have no faith in Eli Manning against the Ravens defense. I have no faith in the running game of the Giants against the Ravens front. I guess if you're looking for a value, Terrence West in his 2 starts went 113 and a touchdown and then 95 yards last week, is taking over as the feature back for the Ravens. And the Ravens will be stubborn with the run, and the Giants' scuffling offense will allow them to stay stubborn with the run. So a lot of volume on West, even if the Giants are number 6 against fantasy running backs.
Certainly. And last week was kind of a big I might not be using Eli Manning again for a while if he has another dud, and he just had another dud in a pretty good matchup. So I think you're just taking a break from the Giants other than maybe Odell Beckham, and you can't really trust any of these running backs. I know Bobby Rainey had quite a few receptions last week, but no thanks,
Like the Giants-Packers game, I think that the head coach of the Giants, who comes from that Packers coaching tree, once he became the head coach, it took him more off of the onus of the offensive coordinator play calling.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of what's costing the Giants right now.
I totally agree. And, they're running the same system, but without him totally engaged in that and worrying about other stuff, it certainly seems like it's had, a negative effect. With Steve Smith out, is there any interest in a Dennis Pitta or a Mike Wallace? Or
I don't love the receivers against the Giants because they are actually getting healthier on the corners, and Joe Flacco is more of a dump off to the tight end type. So if you're going with something, it's probably Pitta.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Now this one's fun.
Yeah.
Panthers Saints. Cam Newton should be back. If that's the case, honestly, I might, knock Greg Olsen down a few notches after what I saw Derek Anderson do last week of just lock into him. But, obviously that's a good thing for the Panthers offense, opens things up in the dome with Breeze. Looking at here, and scale of 1 to 10, what do you think of this game, I guess?
I think this is probably if there is a 10 on the board, this is probably it. The last time these two teams hooked up, it was a 41-38 shootout. And that's when the Panthers defense was playing championship caliber football. They're not doing that right now. So you got to love the return of Jonathan Stewart, Cam Newton, both at reduced prices because of the injury. Even if Stewart doesn't get 20 carries, he can score a touchdown against the Saints defense that is dead last against fantasy running backs, and they've given up a fantasy high 9 touchdowns to the running back position, and that's through just 4 games. Heck, even Cameron Artis-Payne, who had 2 touchdowns Monday night, might be in play for a touchdown too. I like the stack of Newton, Calvin Benjamin if he plays. He's got a little banged up with his knee. Greg Olsen, all stacking options against the Saints. So the Panthers, who have been struggling out of the gate, and in a particular recent weeks, should get healthy here against the Saints. And then on the other side, you can't be wary of that Panthers defense any longer. Breeze, of course, has the 27 touchdowns in his past 7 home games. You got to love Brandon Cooks, who went 6, 104, and 1 in the past meeting. Mark Ingram scored in each of the past 2 against the Panthers. And I think Kobe Fleener is a sleeper play facing the 6th worst team in fantasy against tight ends.
I love Brandon Cooks as a tournament play this week. He's been struggling. He's been losing people money. He had that big first week, and then he had the bye. I get that some people are going to be on him because they like this game, but overall, compared to a lot of the other higher priced guys, I think you're getting a pretty good deal on ownership and price with him this week. As far as the Panthers go, I mean, there's just so many injuries right now. Like, I'm waiting until Sunday to truly lock them in. But yeah, all the guys you mentioned, even the running backs in this game, Cameron Artis-Payne, or if Jonathan Stewart plays, we're looking at both those potentially at a cheap price. Olsen and Kelvin, yeah, I mean, fire away as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed.
So Jaguars Bears, the two teams that just have no identity right now. I just have no idea, especially more so the Bears. They look great at home against the Lions, and they're like, Brian Hoyer's moving the ball with this dude named Cameron Meredith, and you're like, what are you doing, Bears? Like, get out of here.
You know what? Brian Hoyer, since taking over as the starter, has gone 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in each of his past 3. He just missed the 400 mark last week. So if Alshon Jeffrey and Eddie Royal have some bad news before game time, love Cameron Meredith. But I'm liking Zach Miller. I like Alshon Jeffrey in this one. I think the passing game with Hoyer has been revitalized for the Bears. I'm not in love with Jordan Howard now that he has kind of risen up to his price. His price has risen up, and his matchup here isn't great. The Jags defense has been number 7 against fantasy running backs, so it might be a better week to jump on the passing attack with Hoyer, Jeffrey, and Miller.
Yeah, and weirdly, the Jags picked Jalen Ramsey really high in the draft, and he's making a pretty big impact, and he's kind of funneling down, like you mentioned, a lot of the targets. So they're going to be looking at Zach Miller, I think. So I like that call quite a bit. He's still pretty cheap. Agree on Jordan Howard, easy to play him the last few weeks just because of that price and his role. Now it's getting to be okay. Yeah, and his matchups. And now it's getting to be okay. He's getting expensive. He's up there. I could play him, or he's only a few hundred away from some of the top options there. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Now, as far as the Jags go, are you looking at stacking them maybe in a tournament sense, or are you kind of
I'm actually more apt to fade them. I think the Bears under Fox are a bit better defensively than you might have thought. We don't favor the matchup in terms of Bortles, Yeldon. Allen Robinson is consistent. Allen Hurns is affordable. But we just can't be sure of all those weapons. Bortles, Robinson, Julius Thomas is coming back. There's probably going to be a limited amount of production, and who is going to get it? I guess we could be certain that Robinson is going to get some, but at his price, is he going to get enough? The ceiling's just not there, and the floor is potentially low.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of targets in that offense, and people hate Marquise Lee at this point, but they're giving him honestly 6 to 8 targets a week now, so that's not necessarily making him fantasy relevant, but it might be chipping away at some of these other guys. So I think they are in play, but yeah, especially in
let's say Lee is Allen wrenching.
Oh,
Allen Hurns, Allen Robinson. Okay, if you have to explain it, it's not good.
No, I was with you. I just envisioned, I had like a flashback to all the terrible craftsmanship I've had over the years with like making desks. Yeah. Putting bikes together and like just giving up halfway through. Yeah. So, anyhow, yeah, I think that's how you kind of look at the Jags offense this week. Rams, Lions. I think there are some pretty interesting plays here. Obviously, Lions a little better at home than on the road. How are you looking at this matchup, and are there some prime plays in this game?
The one thing that benefits looking at the Rams is you're certain that the volume is going to be on Todd Gurley. The problem here is even if he gets 100 yards, the Lions are the lone team in football yet to give up a rushing touchdown or any kind of touchdown to a fantasy running back. So Gurley 100 yards at his price, not as intriguing if you get Gurley with a couple touchdowns. So I'm probably not going to play anything on the Rams because it's all Gurley. And then on the Lions side, if Theo Riddick plays, he's getting a lot of volume in the pass game. Eric Ebron's getting consistent cash game type production. And with the targets on the outside, Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Anquan Bolden, I just can't be sure who's going to show up there. I don't think it's going to be a wide open game. So if I'm playing something, I'm playing Theo Riddick if he's healthy.
Yeah, that's a fair call. Because I'm a biased Rams fan, I might throw out a Tavon and Rams defense stack, but I wouldn't advise that for anyone but myself, because, yeah, I mean, it seems like the Rams could be in a tailspin here if they drop this one. The Case Keenum experiment is honestly going better than I expected. Kenny Britt's actually for a pretty decent season. It's just so hard to trust them, week to week with any kind of consistency.
I will say the Lions have been the third worst against fantasy quarterbacks and ninth worst against fantasy receivers. It's just you can't be sure where the targets are going to go.
Right, exactly. Next one here, I think we're pretty sure on where these targets and touches are going to go. Steelers and Dolphins. Looks like Marcus Wheaton might be out, is what I just heard on Twitter. So if that is the case, Sammy Coates back at practice catching some passes. What are you looking at with the Steelers team?
Well, the problem with the Steelers is you can be sure that they're going to score a lot of points. You can be sure they're going to score a lot of points at Miami, a team that just gave up a ton of points to the Titans, who are not an offensive juggernaut. It's the where do you go with the Steelers? Because unless you're expecting the Steelers to hang 50 on the Dolphins, it's tough to get value out of all of their options. Le'Veon Bell's got a dream matchup against the last ranked run defense. But the Dolphins have only allowed one rushing touchdown to a running back. So if he gets 110 yards at his price, he disappointed you unless he gets in the end zone. I guess what you do here is to get exposure to the Steelers, and you do it with Big Ben because he's been a monster. He's cash game play, throwing touchdowns. He could do it to Le'Veon Bell, even Antonio Brown, Sammy Coates, even Jesse James, who's got 3 touchdowns in the past 4. So I would advise, let's stack the Steelers against the Dolphins, but you can't do that with the premium prices of all these outstanding options in terms of Brown, Big Ben, and Bell. So I'm just going to go with Big Ben and hope it all happens the way that I anticipate, which is no rushing touchdowns, all passing and receiving touchdowns.
Well, you could stack them all, but then you have to play guys like Marquise Lee.
Yeah.
Now, something I've kind of been pondering all week is, okay, I love the Steelers. Could this be a game where the Dolphins get down so huge early that this turns into a Jarvis Landry dump-off fest?
Yeah, that's what I wrote in the Week 6 slate breakdown. So if you do indeed love the Steelers to blow this out, not disappoint you, the Steelers were very disappointed at Philly, their last road game. But I don't think they could be possibly that disappointed at Miami. And if that's the case, the Dolphins are going to play catch-up, and they'll get a lot of volume with Landry. The problem with Landry is he just doesn't catch touchdown passes because Ryan Tannehill doesn't throw them.
Right.
But, if there's some garbage time, maybe things will loosen up a little more for Landry.
Yeah, no, probably more of a DraftKings full PPR play than a FanDuel play. But I just think, if you're going all in on a Steelers lineup, you probably want to throw him in there as well.
Yeah.
The next game is one that I'm probably just going to want to sit down and watch and not necessarily even, I'm going to want to get fantasy players involved, but I just think this is going to be a really good game. Bengals and Patriots. What are you looking at here? Is Gronk back to potentially 100-yard, 2-touchdown status?
I have to give you a lot of credit because had I listened to your advice on Martellus Bennett last week, I would have won thousands of dollars in DFS.
Oh, no.
So Martellus Bennett was the one thing that kept me from huge production. I should have just listened to you. You said Martellus Bennett, and I go, no, I like Gronk. He's healthy now. He's going to get big numbers. And he did get good numbers, but all dang touchdowns went to Martellus Bennett. And if I was on that ship like you told me I should be, I would have been so rich I probably wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you right now.
Oh, come on.
Okay, bro, maybe not that rich.
If you win 100K, you got to at least do one more celebration slate breakdown before you send off.
Yeah. Well, Martellus Bennett was a revelation there. The problem now with Brady's return, it's jacked up all the premiums on your Pats. If there's any value down the board, I guess it's Julian Edelman, who's kind of quiet last week, and then Chris Hogan, who wasn't quiet. So maybe Chris Hogan is a favorite to Brady. So maybe we'll watch that and maybe throw a Chris Hogan play at value. I think he's only 5,900 on FanDuel. That's a good value there. You got to like the tight ends. It's just you dislike the fact that they're going to share from each other or split time with each other and cut into each other's production. I just don't love a good Bengals team coming off a horrible loss at Dallas, going into New England and maybe, not stopping the Patriots, but maybe slowing them down and making this game a disappointment for what you usually get out of the Patriots at home, which is a blowout and a lot of production all over the map.
Right. And I mean, Vegas loves the Patriots this week. And obviously I think they're going to win, but some talent on this Bengals defense. Obviously the Cowboys run game got to them last week, but I mean, in terms of this offensive production going to come from Chris Hogan, a revelation for me. I still think Edelman, is going to have his weeks. If I'm in on Tom Brady this week, I'm probably making multiple lineups, in tournaments and just firing them out there. Cause I'll be honest, I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. That is one way to go. Like I said, with Big Ben, the problem is I just don't see Brady having a 4-touchdown day against the Bengals. I think it's going to be more of a game where the Patriots are more in the mid-20s, with a couple field goals. That's only a 2 or 3 touchdown day. And hit Brady's price, there's just other quarterbacks that are going to outproduce him. If you are in love with the Pats and you're not sure where the volume goes, you got to go to the other side and go with A.J. Green, who is kind of a lonely receiver. He's a one-trick weapon for the Bengals down the field. So he should get volume and numbers in playing catch-up if that's the case. And then if you don't love Jeremy Hill against the top 10 run defense in the Pats, then go with Giovanni Bernard getting the easy targets out of the backfield, particularly if the Pats are up in the second half and there's some chip away yards there.
Certainly. So I think that game's interesting. I think this game will be fun as well. Chiefs Raiders. A lot of underpriced players on the Chiefs side of the ball. The Raiders they're being pretty kind to us with where they're going with their fantasy points. It's pretty straightforward. So what are you looking at in this game? Are you on the Chiefs at all, or?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite games of the week. The Raiders have been the worst, all 6 worst run defense. So a potential return to prominence for Jamal Charles at a bargain price is possible, if not likely. The Jamal Charles game a few years ago in 2003, where it went 4 touchdowns, 195 yards receiving. A way to maybe break him back into the Andy Reid system is not pound him 20 times off tackle, but maybe throw him the ball and let him do things in space against the littler defensive players and tacklers. So I like Charles as a play there. The Chiefs, if you're doing a stack, I wouldn't necessarily go with Alex Smith, but Jeremy Maclin and Travis Kelce look like safe, if not high ceiling bets against the Raiders secondary, dead last against fantasy quarterbacks and wide receivers, and 8th worst against running backs and 5th worst against tight ends. So A little Macklin, Kelsey, Charles stack
Mm.
intrigues me. Might be one of the plays I put in a lineup. And then on the other side, Latavius Murray, if he's out, you get some potential value with the replacement running backs. Jalen Richard being a huge sleeper in DraftKings for his receiving. He went 6 for 66 last week.
Yeah, man, I look back at some of my lineups and I said, if I just decided once to go down from McKinnon to Richard, but I just had love for McKinnon last week, man. I don't know what it was, but he's an interesting guy in this matchup. Chiefs still without their top pass rusher in Justin Houston there. I go back and forth on Alex Smith. Like you went through, I like Macklin, I like Kelsey. I feel like that should mean I like Alex Smith as well. I think he's an okay price on DK, but yeah, upside a little cap for tournaments. As far as this next game here, Falcons Seahawks. We saw what the Falcons did to the Broncos last week. What do you envision / project for them against the Seahawks D in Seattle?
Well, I didn't anticipate Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman having the days they did against the Broncos. Very few teams do that. Now we lament the fact that Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are going up again across country all the way up to Seattle to play another one of the stingiest defenses in fantasy. So I think we parlay that into favor for the Seahawks offensive weapons. The Falcons can score points, but they've struggled to slow anyone. So I'm going to load up on Seahawks. Russell Wilson, 309-3 in his last game, proving he's healthy, coming off the bye. He's remade Jimmy Graham again to an elite fantasy tight end. Graham's gone 6-101 and then 6-113 in the past 2 weeks. Numbers that belie his price. So I like little Wilson, Jimmy Graham action. I'm far less certain on the running backs with Christine Michael or CJ Spiller. With Thomas Rawls out. I don't love the downfield receivers either for the Seahawks because you can't be sure. In 1 week, it could be the near minimum play of Jermaine Kearse that goes off. So I like Jimmy Graham pretty much in all my lineups that I'm going to be playing in tight end in terms of tight end, but maybe Russell Wilson is an add-on there for a stack.
Yep, that's Jimmy Graham. I used to love that guy. Last year, had the big major injury that you're worried about, but back-to-back 100-yard games, looks to be a big part of the offense, looks to be making some big plays. I'm in. As far as this Falcons team, I'm going to continue to not totally be in on them in these types of matchups, but Jesus,
Yeah, the running back production is impressive. And, with Coleman, they're consistently using him as the pass receiver. So his price is priced as a backup running back, but his receiving production makes him perform like a starter. So even in a tough run game type matchup where they won't run the ball that very well, he can be effective out of the backfield. Plus, because the Seahawks have linebackers, they could be confident enough, maybe to a fault, that they can play Coleman with a linebacker, and then Coleman, that's where he does his damage.
And you mentioned this in the article, asking a linebacker to cover him, on any type of route is going to be tough with his speed. You saw it last week. They had on his receiving touchdown, they had him just run in a straight line, and the linebacker was just like, he just basically threw his hands up. He's like, I'm not staying with this guy. So, yeah, I think, that's going to be something teams start to game plan for. That might open things up, for the rest of the team. But, yeah, I actually don't hate that game overall. Cowboys Packers, getting into the later games here. Where are you at with Zeke this week, I guess?
Well, this is an interesting thing because the immovable object against the immovable, or the irresistible object against the movable force. I can't even spit it out. Ezekiel Elliott is facing the best run defense in the NFL, and it's not even close. The Packers have given up just 171 yards rushing and a paltry 2.0 yards per carry, tops in the NFL, and it's by a long shot. So the Packers, who have yet to allow even a 40-yard rusher, faces a running back coming off totals of 140, 138, and 134. This is a good Dallas offensive line, so they can stay stubborn with Elliott and pound him maybe to the tune of 20 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown. Makes him a cash game option. I don't think his ceiling is as high as you would like, though. And then, when you look at the pass game, Dak Prescott probably won't have Des Bryant. And the Packers, shut down the Giants' offense. I think the Giants have more weapons than the Cowboys do. So I don't think you can love the pass game. If you do anything, you're playing Elliott just because he gets that volume and in a run-heavy game.
Yeah, you just look at these matchups and you say, okay, Packers tremendous against the run, Cowboys great running. They've limited what they do with Dak so far this year, and the Cowboys do have some nice athletic pieces to their passing game, but they're not necessarily good receivers. Terrence Williams is a pretty athletic guy, but he's not that great of a receiver that you want to trust in DFS. So that's going to be a battle. In terms of Aaron Rodgers, Cowboys tend to limit game flow here. Is he someone you're looking at as a contrarian guy, or are you walking away from this one?
The problem I have with Rodgers, he's yet to even reach 260 yards passing in a game this season. So one thing I'm certain about is Jordy Nelson. He's the lone sure thing. He's caught a touchdown in each of the first 4 games for the Packers, and he's posted 5 and 4. So I love Jordy Nelson, just not on Rodgers. And the running game with Eddie Lacy's ankle being iffy, I'm just going to avoid all of that. If I'm playing anything on the Packers side, it's Nelson. Anything on the Cowboys side, it's Elliott. And look away.
Now, what about the man that's caught 3 touchdowns in 4 games, Devontae Adams, Eric? Come on, dude.
Yeah. Well, also you got Randall Cobb in there too, who was 9 for 108 last week. It's just Rodgers, in order to make those guys all consistently productive, he needs to be that 320-yard plus passer, which he hasn't been. Mm-hmm. He wasn't that last year, and we thought it was because Jordy Nelson was gone. And now Jordy Nelson's back, and he hasn't even reached 260. Nelson's been solid, but the other guy's just not that good. Maybe that's just what they are, and Nelson's just that much better than all of them. So we play Nelson, and we avoid the rest.
Yeah, Nelson's been tremendous in the red zone this year, and I think that will continue. But it's been noticeable that him and Rodgers haven't they've been trying to go to that deep ball, but they just haven't hit one yet. So that's definitely big for Rodgers' fantasy value. So I agree. If it's going to be someone, it's going to be Jordy. All right, Texans Colts. I mean, this game is always madness, regardless of what the things say coming in. What are you looking at in this matchup? Do you think there's some exploitable fantasy assets here?
Well, the Texans defense, huge bargain against a Colts team that's been second best against the second most generous to opposing defenses. It's because Luck just cannot get protected, and the Texans can get after the quarterback. You get sacks, you rack up numbers, you potentially get turnovers. So I'm playing the Texans defense. I'd call it a contrarian play, but their price is so low, I think a lot of people will go with the defense against Andrew Luck, which you used to think, oh, that's bad news. Luck's going to rack it up. But only thing he's racking up right now is sack totals. If you're going with someone on the Colts, you love T.Y. Hilton. Since Dante Moncrief has been out, he's been very good. He scored a touchdown in each of his past 3. He went 10, 171, and 1 last week. So I'm liking the Texans defense. I like T.Y. Hilton. I'm fading Andrew Luck at his price. And I guess if you want a big-time play, you go with Lamar Miller against Colts defense that's been 4th worst against fantasy running backs. He's going to impact the game on the ground and in the air. Lamar Miller's touches have gone down each of the past games since that huge opener when he got 32 touches. So it's a game I think goes back to Miller in terms of 120 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, maybe even some passing numbers for Brock Osweiler, who hasn't made that much hay with DeAndre Hopkins yet.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I would compare what Andrew Luck's trying to do right now. It's like he's trying to chip it in the hole, in a hailstorm. It's just bodies raining down on him every play. And J.J. Watt is out, but their first-round pick, Jadeveon Clowney from a few years ago, starting to, make some big plays, especially, in the pass rush. So they still got some talent on that defense. So I do like Luck, but unfortunately this week he's running into a pretty good matchup. Monday night here. So obviously not on the main slates, but if you play Thursday, if you play primetime slates, we're looking at the Jets versus the Cardinals. Carson Palmer's coming back from a concussion. John Brown looks to be healthy. Jets have been gashed in the secondary so far this year. Is that where you're looking towards?
Yeah, you go with Carson Palmer if you're playing primetime quarterback. The Jets have allowed an aerial assault thus far this season, ranking 4th worst against fantasy quarterbacks, 2nd worst against the pass. And one thing about Palmer, he's got a varied array of weapons. You can't be sure, other than Larry Fitzgerald, where those numbers will go. John Brown, Michael Floyd, Jaron Brown, even J.J. Nelson potentially. So you play Palmer and you get all of them. And if you play Larry Fitzgerald, you'll get decent numbers. But I know everybody's down on Darrelle Revis, but maybe if Revis shades Fitzgerald, maybe the Cardinals just don't go to Fitzgerald. They look for all those other guys, in which case you put it back on Palmer even more. And you go with David Johnson, you think, okay, the Jets are actually number 2 against the run. There might be some numbers to be made for David Johnson in the passing game. But for me, it's Carson Palmer going 350-4 and spreading it all around to everyone.
That's what I envision as well. And, I like John Brown. I like Larry Fitzgerald. But the best way to get, exposure in this game is just, play Carson Palmer. Maybe switch it up in different lineups, but it's going to be tough to tell, who exactly to zero in on there. As far as the Jets go, taking the week off from Marshall, or does Patrick Peterson, not really?
Well, I think you could stay on Marshall because Eric Decker's out for the year, so they're gonna treat Marshall as their go-to guy. One thing you will say, the value of Quincy Enunwa is there because he's priced as a backup. He gets a high volume targets that belie his once backup price, and he's getting receptions, and now he's a starter with Eric Decker down. So Enunwa is a nice play.
There you go. The former Nebraska Cornhusker. So I guess, that's pretty generally the slate. Is there anything else you want to add in before we, sign off here?
No, I will say, though, that I do like this week more than most the primetime slate. The Colts, Texans, because of the specificity. You could say that word for me. T.Y. Hilton is very clearly Luck's guy. Lamar Miller, very clearly a good matchup. And then Carson Palmer, clearly the quarterback play. And then, you can get a new one as a value. So jump in on those late games and play those very specific plays.
Eric, you know what I've learned in anything past 2010, it's the Google era. If you just get the word within the same realm of the real word, people can go and Google it and figure it out for themselves. That's kind of how I play it. You just keep the ball rolling. If they want to go look it up and figure out what you were saying, then you're all good. Yesterday, me and Jason I was trying to make an analogy to Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and I forgot the Roadrunner, so I just left it. I left it blank and kind of let everyone else fill it in for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just how you play it,
I was more of a Rocky and Bullwinkle guy.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Or Tom and Jerry. The
Absolutely.
great cartoon combos. I'm gonna put
Hey, you know what?
I'm gonna put a stack on those combos.
You know what? Whatever combos you viewers like, throw your favorite cartoons in the comments. Let us know. If you want to
combo I like Russell Clay and Eric Mack.
Ooh, there you go.
Not in a sexual way.
we will be here all season for you. If you want to check out Eric's article, he does it every week for us, breaks down the entire slate. If you like what we're doing on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. As always, hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys in week 7.